have made us to realize. However, if we look at the Indian traditional systems of Gurukul, it was never been in that sense, but the person coming out of the Gurukul system is always been considered as a well learned, well knowledge, and need to be appreciated based on the work, based on the enlightenment he goes through the Gurukul system. In fact, the other narrative that the British education system have imparted in our India is largely about looking at the Westerns or Western community as a community of highly acclaimed, knowledgeable as compared to the rest of the world. And in fact, today we largely see that large amount of people really look at those Western countries as something of a source of a great knowledge. And unless and until you come back to India without having a postdoctoral fellowship or an experience of more than 10 years of time, you are not been considered in the country like India that you are really knowledgeable and you are worth to be given a position. And I think that is what perhaps the Europeans or the Britishers have thought of, and they have to the large extent was quite successful. And if we look at the root cause of it, I think India's independence movement or the time period when the Britishers ruled the country like India gives this kind of a narratives which they have established more than a couple of centuries before, and we still struggle for it. And in the process, I thought on the 75th year of India's independence, let's talk about how the science was being grown during those period and who are all those people who actually not only helped but made the Europeans or colonial people to understand that we are not less than anyone. In fact, we are quite ahead of time of the thinking that anybody could imagine. And certain amount of examples from this presentation are going to make you realize that what I say is could be of to a large extent it is true. So what am I going to speak for next 40 to 45 minutes is all about how do we define the India's independence? Then how was the India before the Britishers and during the Britishers? And of course, the historical development. And it becomes so important when the Britishers have brought the new education system around 1835, how the Britishers have looked at India. And that's where it becomes so important to see who says what about India during those period of time. And of course, how the science and technology has been used by the Britishers to rule the India. And in the process, it also becomes to realize that how the Indians have really struggled for independence, at the same time struggle for the science. And at the end, I'm going to make you realize there are certain institutions established by the natives wherein a great amount of leaders have been developed. And when I say the leaders, you will realize those leaders were really at par with any kind of science that been developed those period. So looking into this, let me mention that how do we define the independence? And I think when the moment we say about the India's independence, this is was the typical kind of an image or the picture that comes to our mind. There are social or political leaders making the Britishers to understand that the time is over and you need to go back. So basically, when we talk about the India's freedom struggle, largely we consider that it was a socio-economical struggle. But this presentation and on this 75th years of India's independence on the Amrit Mahotsav, the whole idea is to make the young generation aware about it was not the only socio-political struggle, but there was a great struggle by the science and scientific fraternity as well. Now, when we talk about the word like an independence, I think to a large extent, many of you will agree to me saying that the word independence has a long route to the first war of independence that we all know, and that the first war of independence on the globe, it goes to the America when we talk about the first war of independence. And the independence is nothing but the freedom or liberation that we talk about. But when we talk about the independence in the Indian aspect, we always specify this independence as in swatantrata or swadhinata. And in this both the words, the swa signifies a lot. Now, what I mean to say here is that if you look at the various invaders who actually come to Indian landmass, many of them have actually looted India in a different aspect, but to a large extent, there was not much disturbance happened to our swa. But in times of an British, what was really, I would say, uh, a really a struggle was, and the Britishers wanted to eliminate that swa, that is the self-respect among the people of India. And Britishers have really, uh, quite successful in making all of us to underestimate ourselves. We lost that confidence. And as I gave two examples very in the beginning, and similar examples that you will see that many, even today, many of our Indians have a very strong feeling that Britishers have shown us the routes and the roads by bringing the railways, by bringing the Indian Post, by bringing the telegram services, bringing the Western medical facilities in India, and we were absolutely were in the dark. But however, our Indian scientific fraternity has made us realize, no, we were not. We had a very great time. Our ancient traditional knowledge system was quite robust and quite, significant in realizing the development of science and technology, even from the ancient time, that we will come to know in the presentation in a few moments now. Now, when we look at this struggle, especially in terms of the British, it is not the Britishers who only invaded or attacked India in recent time, but if you look at those period, there were large amount of invaders who actually come to India, and I'm only talking from the time of invention of an calendar. And if that we consider, then we know there were Arab, Turk, Mughal, all of them have come to India. They not only looted India, but they to the large extent made the Indians to struggle for many things. But ultimately, when any invaders actually come, they have come with the three distinct kind of an objective. Was of course to quest for the power, to get the economy, to gain a lot of economy out of this Indian land, and of course to sect or cult the culture, the religions on the Indian landmass. And these are all the three major motives that we see as an any invader who come to India. And by these invasions, that is very clear. What does the attack shows is that India was certainly a very prosperous country. Now, when we say a prosperous, in what sense? It was in the sense of wealth, knowledge, and resources. Of course, it is very quite easy to understand that if we do not have anything of this, why the people have come to the India and try to, acquire the landmass, try to settle over here. Then of course it is very obvious that we were very rich in the wealth, knowledge, and resources. Now, in comparison to the various attack where happened on India, Britishers have altogether a different stream in comparison to the rest of the invaders. And what Britishers did is actually they used armies to loot the Britishers, but in addition to that, they used the science and technology in a very sophisticated manner so that they could, extract lot of wealth of India. And we are quite sure now, and we are very much aware about this, that this is what they did to a very large extent. Now, in terms of understanding the India's independence movement, it becomes very important, especially in terms of understanding the British rules, that how do the India was there during those period. And it becomes so important to understand that the first man who was actually started his journey in the European region in search of India, and that was Christopher Columbus in 1492. And we all know the same Christopher Columbus who started his journey to in search of India. He all the way took the different route and landed in the what we know today is in America. And we know the America discovery or America's birth is not really very far. It's hardly about some 500 years old story, not really big. And what does it tell you? It tells a very significant underlying message that in the 15th or 16th century, the search of India was so obvious because India was full of knowledge, resource, and the wealth of that time. And the first, I would say, the European who got success in discovering India or reached to the landmass of India was Vasco da Gama in 1497 or 98, who was a Portuguese in uh, by a country, and he landed in Kerala. Today we know it as in Calicut, and slowly the in other Europeans started their journey, and we know the first Britishers landed in India was in 1609 or 10, and when they came, where they came as an what we called as a traders, and slowly or gradually we know the Germans, French, and other Europeans have reached to India. And when they came with a very small army, or what we call it as a small company of the people for their um, for themselves, because when they are coming from so far away, they need to have their small army to save them, to secure themselves. And we all know what this India has a culture of Vasudeva Kutumbakam, and everyone who comes to India has always been considered as our guest to a very long extent. We never looked at anyone as coming with any kind of motive. We welcomed them all when they reach to India as a traders. But slowly we know that these traders have actually have a different thoughts in the mind, and slowly they have realized and understood the psyche of the people in India. And we know in 1757 the first battle of Plassey happened in the Bay of Bengal, and the Nawab of Bengal has been defeated by East India Company under the leadership of Robert Clive. And then the Britishers have got the rights, what we called as a Diwani rights, to collect the taxes from the normal people. And what is important in this to understand and realize is that by this Diwani right, the Britishers have got the full freedom to enrich their what we call it as a their treasury with lot of taxes, and slowly they have started gaining large amount of money in their kitty. At the same time, it becomes important for all of us to realize that that was the time of 1757, which is the time where in the Britain this industrial revolution started. And when we know that it is the industrial revolution, it becomes important to understand that such industrial revolution will require large amount of natural resources for the purpose of establishing such kind of an industries. And parallelly, we should realize in back of the mind that that was the time where British were ruling almost majority part of our globe, and slowly that was the time we know that America was also started war of independence, and that war of independence won by the Native Americans in 1783, and America become an independent and sovereign country. And it is so obvious that since the country become an independent, all the source, all the income which was supposed to be there for the Britain has all of a sudden totally stopped. And of course, nothing was coming from there. And today we all know this America is nothing but the settlers' colony, in a way that all Americans are nothing but the Britishers in origin. And they actually killed a lot of original Red Indians and established themselves today. And that is the time when Britishers have stopped getting natural resources from America. Then obviously the entire focus was shifted from rest of the globe to the India, and they were trying to gain the whole landmass of India. And today we know that after a 60 years of first battle of Plassey, after defeating the Maratha in Panipat in 1818, the Britishers have got the entire India in their, you know, uh, for ruling over the India. And we know when we say this is the Akhand Bharat, which included Pakistan, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, and Nepal. So in a way, the entire landmass was under the rulership of Britain. And this was the period that we now looking at about 1820 or 1825. So since the time of 1757 to about 1820-25, 70 years of British ruling India, there were many number of people have reached to this Indian landmass and started understanding variety of aspect of India. And that's why it becomes important to know who says what about India. And in the process, I would like to quote three different people in this whole history. And the first one is a Charles Grant, who was the British politician and in the British Parliament. And in 1792, he says that once English knowledge imparted to the Asiatic, their faculty of reasoning would be restored and they would rise to the scale of human being. The statement is so ridiculous. It says that they were not ready to consider even Indians are human beings. And what kind of, the thought these Britishers used to have about the Indians. And not only that, I think many of you will agree to me that Lord Macaulay, who was given the responsibility to, see and understand the India in a larger extent, and when he does that after he returns to Britain, he says that I feel it is impossible for us with our limited means to attempt and educate the people of body of the people. We must at present do our best to form a class who may be interpreters between us and the millions whom we govern. A class of a person, Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, in opinion, in moral and intellect. To that class, we may leave it to refine the vernacular dialect of the country, to enrich those dialects with the terms of science borrowed from the Western nomenclature, and to render them to degree fit vehicles for conveying knowledge to the great mass of the population. These kind of messages are very clear that they wanted to create another layer because they knew that there are very handful number of Britishers and they cannot govern the country like India, which has such a diversified, population in every aspect, in the language, in their, satire, in everything. And if they have to rule, if they have to govern the country, they have to generate a layer which will be, what is important to understand is that the person Indian in blood and color, but his ideas, his imaginations and opinions will be like an Britishers. And to large extent, they got really successful in doing that. In fact, another quote which I would like to emphasize here, and the author of the book, The Expansion of England, John Robert Seeley, he writes in his book in 1887 that it should not be the expansion of an empire and imperial expansion, but the expansion of an England in India. What does this statement say? This statement says that they wanted to make the India like in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, wherein all the population is British in the origin and does not have anything per se as an Indian. All these statements makes all of us really realize that the kind of level of thinking this small handful number of people have. In fact, if we try to, there are few more quotes, and these quotes become so important and eye opener that how do the Britishers and those people have thought of. And it was these comments and these quotes are not individuals. These quotes are to the whole of these Indians living in this. And H.B. Metcalfe, who was the head of the uh, Journal of an General of an Surveyor of India, he says that Indians are incapable of any original work in the natural sciences. Don't you think this is an insult to the Indians? Alfred Croft, Director of Public Instructions of Bengal, he says that Indians do not possess the requisite temperament for the exact sciences. This is how these people who were ruling the country that time insulted the India and made these Indians to understand and made these people to realize that they are here, they are the most advanced in comparison to all of us. And in fact, what has happened out of all this is that ultimately Britishers used the science and technology to rule the country of India. And what happened that we all know, when the Britishers have won the Battle of Plassey in 1757, within the first 10 years of time, they have established the Survey of India. Now, we all are the people of science who can very easily understand what does the work of a survey is important. And slowly, if you look at the establishment of various institutions, like a Geological Survey of India in 1857, Archaeological Survey of India in 1861, Botanical Survey of India in 1890, or Zoological Survey of India in 1916. All these surveys are very clear-cut ideas to understand the wealth sitting in the different landmass of our India, and try and establish new technologies by which they can loot those wealth which is sitting there. And many of the people, in fact, you also must have come across that many people do believe that Britishers have brought lot many advancements to India because, and we should really appreciate those. In fact, in the railways brought by Britishers in 1853 were not for the convenience of the people of the country of India, but it was for the transportation of resources to the England. And we all know the Mumbai was the port through which large amount of these resources could be transported to the ships. And that becomes important that the first Indian railway was established between Mumbai and Thane. And you all are, must be aware, sitting in Mumbai, that how this railway network established by India was not for the benefit and the convenience of India, but it was for the Britishers to take all those materials to the Britain so that their factories can run easily. In fact, many of people do consider that Britishers have brought the Indian postal services and telegram services for the convenience of the people. But if you look at this, why it was established in 1854, but it was for the establishment or for the communication purpose of the various British troops or army troops were struggling in the different part of the India subcontinent. In fact, when such kind of wars used to happen, all these armies were struggling. They used to get wounds and all number of things during the fightings, and it becomes important for those Britishers to bring the medicinal services from the Europe to the India, and that is how the medical services or medical colleges or knowledge establishment has started in India. And first Indian medical college established in Kolkata in 1835. So everything that we look at, it was for their own benefit. It was for their own purpose. In fact, because we all know the kind of land or the soil that we have, it is very, very fertile, whether we look at the different parts of Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Bengal, or maybe Maharashtra down the line, Karnataka, anywhere, all the fertile lands were actually used for the cultivation of various crops. And we all must remember the various crops that we, in fact, were not aware to a very long extent, like indigo, sugarcane, tea, which we drink perhaps 5 times a day. These were not originally from India, but these were brought by the Britishers and cultivated all those in the in the Indian soil. They have generated such kind of material and transported to the British back to England. In fact, to have a good amount of crop, what we called as a more crop, more crash. So for that purpose also, the Britishers have generated or started the irrigation systems. And to understand that irrigation system, Thomson College of Civil Engineering, started by Britishers in Roorkee, presently in Uttarakhand, in 1854. They knew that there is a lot of wealth sitting in the forest as well. So Britishers have established forest schools like in 1878 in Dehradun for the research purpose or for the forest science. Ultimately, the underlying message to make you all aware that the science and technology what Britishers have brought, it was not for the people of the India, but it was for their own purpose to understand the wealth and extract those wealth and take it back to the Britain. And ultimately, this education system established by Britishers have got a success in what? This education system has generated the government jobs. And in fact, the same today in this education system, we expect that when you learn, when you educate with the graduation and post-graduation, we expect that we will get an easy job. And that is what the Britishers have made the people to understand, that if you take the education from this education system, you will get in jobs. And but please remember what kind of job these education system have imparted. This was a third grade or the lower classes. Now what I mean, these education system have generated the people and the positions like a colleague, coolies like an assistant engineer, medical assistant, surveyors, clerk, all those jobs were being offered. And in fact, we know that many people who got recruited that time, they all been offered in the third grade position. But look at the people, especially the Indians, the kind of work that they did. It was far, far, far better than what the Britishers used to do, but they have always been discriminated, sidelined. And one of the example is Radhanath Sigdar. Radhanath Sigdar has been appointed in the Great Trigonometric Survey of Britishers in 1831 as a computer whose job was to compute various mathematical tables and compile it. And the same Radhanath Sigdar was the one who discovered the highest peak in the Himalayas. And today what we know is the Mount Everest, against the name of Mr. George Everest, who was the Surveyor General of India in 1830 and 1830 to 1843. The discovery belongs to the Indian. The man who discovered the highest peak was the Radhanath Sigdar, who was very much Indian in origin. He was highly acclaimed mathematician who did lot of calculation, but the name was been given against the name of Britisher. Now, the kind of discrimination that Radhanath Sigdar passed through was in 1857, when the technical report and mathematical chapters in the surveyor manual was supposed to be written. It was written by Radhanath Sigdar, but his name was totally dropped from the third edition of the book. So that shows how difficult, how they actually made the people of this country to ridicule how they were supposed to suffer from all this. And the same Radhanath Sigdar, when he come to know that the people are being on the position where they are working, are being called as a mountain colleague, and when he protested against such kind of a nomenclature, he was being fined with the rupees of 200 that time. So such kind of discrimination was there. The another example is a Chintamani Raghunathachari, who was again joined as a coolie in 1840 in the Madras Astronomical Observatory, and then he was been promoted from the coolie to be an first assistant to the government astronomer in 1864. The same Chintamani Raghunathachari, who was an assistant, but he was the caliber that he hold was he discovered the worst variable star named as an R Reticula in 1867. In spite of such kind of an work and caliber, these people were always been discriminated because they were Indian in origin. And only in his last part of his life, he was been given the Fellow of Royal Astronomical Society in 1872. Third and very, very important personality was a Pramathnath Bose, who was a really acclaimed and highly intellectual class person who graduated from the Cambridge University of 1874. And it's quite obvious that if at all someone has to learn and take the education, Britishers did not establish any education system which can be at par, who will have a facility to learn and study the high class education. And then obviously they were supposed to go to the England to learn and study. And in 1874, when he graduated from the Cambridge University, he got again another degree from the Royal School of Mining in paleontology. He was a great accomplished geologist. And after he coming out of this Royal School of Mining, he requested Britishers to offer him a job, but they have totally neglected and discriminated and not allowed him to have any offer. And that very early age, Pramathnath Bose realized the kind of discrimination Britishers are doing. He had very quickly started working with Dadabhai Nauroji and Anand Mohan Bose in Britain, in England, and started the socio-political organization named India Society, wherein he started talking about the deprivation of Indians by the Britishers. And by this, Britishers have realized the threat by such person, and they immediately offered him a position as an assistant superintendent in Geological Survey of India and shifted him to India. And please remember, the same Pramathnath Bose was highly accomplished scientist. By his own work, he has discovered a huge iron ore in the Jharkhand, manganese in the Jabalpur, coal deposit in the Darjeeling, and petroleum in the Digboy and Nahar Katia in Assam. And he discovered with his surveys on the various parts of India, but he has never been accomplished. He was never been given such kind of a position. He was never been appreciated by the Britishers. And that's why he was so frustrated to a very long extent. And when he realized that Tata Steel or Jamshedji Tata is looking for establishment of a steel factory, he wrote a letter to Jamshedji Tata, requested him that he should come to the Kalimati, which is near to the Orissa and the border of Jharkhand, presently Jharkhand, because he has discovered that there is a great amount of coal which is sitting, and that they should come here and establish this industry. And he wrote a letter to Jamshedji Tata, and later on Maharaja of Mayurbhanj in Orissa and Jamshedji Tata established the Tata Steel industry. What we know today is as a Jamshedpur. So the credit goes to the Pramathnath Bose, who helped them to understand the various, wealth which was sitting there. And ultimately, he got so frustrated because he was being always neglected by the Britishers. And when he left this British job in 1903, he started his own soap industry. And in realizing the discriminatory rules of Britishers, he decided to pen down all those experience, and he enriched the Indian literature by writing a book on the history of Hindu civilization under the British rule. And he wrote the 3 different volumes. The second volume talks about the industrial situation in India at that time. The same Pramathnath Bose, how he was being discriminated. In 1884, when his assessment work was being done, his immediate superior says, director says, that is the HB Medlicott says, that a native is not capable of doing any original scientific work, and so many different things about him. In fact, in a subsequent assessment also, the same Medlicott says that the geology demands the conscientious and the sober judgment and also imagination, and natives, particularly Bengalis, are not fit for the geological work, which calls for the aptitude, efficiency, and imagination. Such kind of discrimination was given to Pramathnath Bose, and as to the highest level, he was being superseded by the British officer Thomas Holland, who was the 10 years junior to him. And it was very, very obvious that it was to make this Indians understand that the higher positions are to be kept for the imperial services, the people from the Britain, from the European in origin. And in protest to that, he uh, took the voluntary retirement, and rest of his life he stayed in Ranchi in Jharkhand and remained a good source of knowledge information for various people of that time. Now, slowly what we will realize is that after such kind of an understanding by various people of that time, it becomes important to understand that there were a great amount of people like visionaries who has understood this kind of a nature by the Britishers, and one of the great name was Mahendralal Sarkar. And I'm very happy to narrate a small incident here. The Mahendralal Sarkar was such an accomplished, I would say, the intellectual guy. To some extent, he was been also considered as a blue-eyed for the Britishers, because he was the of such a caliber that during his period of masters, Britishers used to ask him to take over the classes based on his knowledge. So the kind of knowledge appreciation was quite high. And very immediately after he passed out in 1863 from the Kolkata Medical College, he was being offered as a secretary in the British Medical Association in 1863, and he became a most successful medical practitioner in allopathy, and he was also a strong criticizer for homeopathy during that time. But this is one of the very, very important incident in the life of Mahendralal Sarkar. When he was a well-established allopath doctor, he has realized in his treatment that there are certain patients which are not getting cured with the allopathy. He started working with Dr. Rajendra Dutt in Kolkata, and he observed that there are certain treatments which are doing best in the homeopathy. And then he has said, the same Britishers who have taught me how to learn the science based on all the logical thinking and based on the scientific aptitude, I have applied same in the homeopathy, and I have realized the homeopathy also gives the great results. And he presented his papers based on the good results of homeopathy in the British Medical Association, Bombay. And when he appreciated homeopathy, the whole of his life become a very, very, I would say, very different, and becomes very challenging for rest of his life. The moment he started appreciating homeopathy, he was being immediately removed from the position of secretary of um, British Medical Association. His practices was being charged. He was being charged with the heavy fees. He was being discarded. He was being put into the lot many troubles. He was not allowed to do the his own practices. And then the same Mahendralal Sarkar realized that how can same Britishers who consider themselves as at par with anyone in the world, how can they teach such kind of unhealthy practice, not unscientific thinking in the common man's eyes? And he started realizing the discriminatory nature of the Britishers, and his research were also been stopped. And that's the reason in 1868 Mahendralal Sarkar started his own journal named as Kolkata Journal of Medicine, through which he published his own work. And he realized that it is a time for the Indians to stand against the British. And he says that we should endeavor to carry on the work with our own efforts, unaided by the government. I want it to be entirely under our management and control. I want it to be solely native and purely national. So he realized that British help is going to not help for the real purpose. So even the growth of science is not going to happen in a right fashion under the British. And he decided to establish a new institution, and the first institution by the Indians, native Indians, named Indian Association of Cultivation of Science emerged in 1876 with the help of Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, and Maharaja of Tripura, and by the various contribution with about 61,000 rupees, this IACS, known as Indian Association of Cultivation of Science, has been established by Mahendra Lal Sarkar. And please remember, the name Indian Association of Cultivation of Science was nothing but it is a scientific extension of a political movement, because Indian Association was a nationalist political organization started by Surendranath Bose, Surendranath Banerjee, and Anand Mohan Bose. So Indian Association of Cultivation of Science is nothing but the scientific extensions of the political movement. So it is very clear that our scientists have also realized that they have to come forward and fight against the British to even to have a progress in the science. And this another visionary is an Ashutosh Mukherjee, who was a mathematician by birth. He was a highly accomplished mathematician who later on also holds the law degree, who did BA, MA in physics, then doctorate in law, and he also become a judge of Kolkata High Court for more than 16 years. Then he also was a vice chancellor of Kolkata University for 5 terms from 1906 to about 1923. And he was the one was a very accomplished scientist or mathematician, and he knew that under the British Raj the good mathematics is not going to come out, and he started the Kolkata Mathematical Society in 1908 with the modern Indian mathematicians to conduct the mathematical research. He also joined the ISCS, that is Indian Association of Cultivation of Science, as a lecturer, and then at the same ISCS he hold the vice presidentship and later on the first Indian president to lead that ISCS. Then he later on he established the Kolkata University College of Science in 1914. And again, while he established that science college, he never took any help from the British, but he took the help or donation from his colleague, Mr. Taraknath Palit and Raj Bihari Ghosh, by which the new fellowship or the new positions were established, which we all know, Sir C.V. Raman and Prafulla Chandra Ray, were the people who got this the Taraknath Palit Fellowship for doing the work in chemistry and the physics respectively. And in respect to Ashutosh Mukherjee, even that time, if you see, many of these Britishers have understood the importance of Ashutosh Mukherjee, his vision. And not only that, Ashutosh Mukherjee was such an accomplished person. He used to find out the bright talent sitting in the different part of the India, and he is the one who identified such bright talent and asked those people to come and work in the Indian Association of Cultivation of Science. And those people are nothing but the Sir C.V. Raman, S. Radhakrishnan, D.R. Bhandarkar, or Shankar Purushottam Agharkar, which we know in Pune as an Agharkar Research Institute, or D.D. Kausambi. These are all the people identify Ashutosh Mukherjee and ask them to study the science in Kolkata. And slowly we know that there were two important acharyas who took the birth. And not only that, these acharyas have taken the science quite ahead of the Britishers. In fact, we all know Acharya Jagdish Chandra Basu, who after completing his graduation and post-graduation from the from the London, from the University of London, when he back to Kolkata, he joined the Presidency College after a huge struggle. And yes, he really struggled for very long. And after he was offered the position in the provincial services and not the imperial services, though he was at par with the Britishers. And in the protest, he said that he is not going to accept the salaries if he is being given a provincial services. And in the protest for next 3 years he did not accept that salary. And this was one of the best way of satyagraha, well before the Gandhiji has started the satyagraha. And this 3 years of no taking the salary made the Britishers realize the kind of work the Jagdish Chandra Basu has been doing. They have realized their mistake and offered him with the full respect the last 3 years salary, and he was been promoted to the imperial services. And when he was working in the Presidency College, he had a 24 square foot small laboratory which he established himself. And please remember that even that time he was working with the contemporary issues. And we all know the Maxwell was the one who was given the example, theoretical example for generation of electromagnetic radiation. And in fact, Acharya Jagdish Chandra Basu was the first one to demonstrate and discover these microwaves. And in his demonstration was at the Asiatic Society in Kolkata, and later on the same demonstration he gave at the British Association of Advancement of Science at the Liverpool, where the stalwarts of physics like Sir James Thomson, Oliver Lodge, Lord Kelvin, etc. were present in that demonstration. In fact, one more important point, this Marconi, who got the later on Nobel Prize, he was also part of the demonstration when he saw how the generation of microwaves are happening. And later on, Marconi was given the Nobel Prize for the generation of microwaves for the communication purpose. And this mistake has been realized by the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, we popularly known as IEEE. And then what they says in their publication is our investigative research into the origin and the first major use of solid state diode detector device lead to the discovery that the first transatlantic wireless signal of Marconi, world's famous experiment, was received by the Marconi using the iron mercury iron coherent telephone detector invented by Sir J.C. Bose in 1898. So this IEEE has realized the importance of the work carried out by the J.C. Bose, where the to many large people used to say the Nobel should have been given to the Acharya Jagdish Chandra Bose, but he was altogether a very different person who was never believed in any patent. And he is the man we all know today. He is the great botanist also, and he is the father of biophysics as well. And he with this chronobiology, he has actually made people to realize the life exists in the plant. And by his experiment, he showed that plants do sleep at night. So Jagdish Chandra Basu, who was really a great personality on himself, did a tremendous amount of great work, in fact, ahead of time. In fact, if I remember correctly, the Nobel laureate of 1977, he says that Acharya Jagdish Chandra Basu was ahead of 60 years of his vision, because that is where his work was, his brain was working. And the same man who did a huge amount of research, and today lot many people working on his research has made realize that he was a real great visionary, and he was a great acharya who understood variety of the things in during his time. And the same Jagdish Chandra Basu has been commented by Alfred Croft or the Charles Downey, principal of Presidency College, with such kind of undiscriminatory and derogatory remark. And that derogatory remark was not only with the J.C. Bose, but it was a generalized statement that Indians do not possess the requisite temperament for the exact science, or the Indians are incapable of rational thinking and hence cannot teach the physics. Such kind of a discrimination, such kind of a staunch, I would say, the believers of the Britishers were towards the Indian. Another Acharya was a Praful Chandra Rai, who was really a great person, who was a teacher, scientist, philanthropist, educationist, patriot, nationalist, everything, because by his own work, after he did his BSc and DSc from Edinburgh University, when he come back to Kolkata, and even he requested to be a professor at Presidency College, he also passed through the derogatory remarks, which I will mention in a later stage. But what it is important to realize, the brightness of this Acharya Praful Chandra Ray during his Edinburgh University teaching, or rather the learning, He wrote an essay in an essay competition about the India before and after the mutiny, and that essay was so famous that it attracted the British Parliament member to read his essay. And John Bright writes a letter to Acharya Praful Chandra Bose, and his letter has been published in the newspapers of that time as a John Bright's letter to the Indian student, wherein the Jagdish Chandra Basu has very categorically said what Britishers has been doing in India is not going to help for anyone, and it's not going to be of a right category. And in fact, that is where, when Acharya Praful Chandra Rai or his contemporaries started to make realize that Indians are the people who are, very backward in the natures, their level of understanding is not great, and that is to in revolt to that, in realization to that, Acharya Prafulla Chandra Rai wrote 2 volumes of book called as an History of Hindu Chemistry, published in 1902 and 1908, in which he has established with the scientific proof how the Indian traditional knowledge system, how the Indian ancient chemistry was well ahead of the time in the science and technology, with the proper proof he gave in his book, and made the rest of the world that Indians were really quite ahead of the time from the ancient period. And he later on not only worked, he discovered the mercurous nitrate, and many other chemicals during his time. And he was really a great philanthropist. He quote by his work, while doing his work, he says that progress of India and Indians can only be possible through the education and economic prosperity of the masses, and for later commerce and the industry are essential, and that chemistry can play a major role for the country's industrial and economic progress. And in doing that, he became a really philanthropist by starting a company called as the Bengal Chemicals and Pharmaceutical Works in 1892, and he remained unmarried till his death. And he, with his salaries, with his money, whatever he got it, he started variety of the programs for the people of the Bengal, for the people around that, and he gave all his money to various people. And he's being a great patriot. He started wearing khadi throughout his life, and he traveled across the India in 1921 to 26. And after the Rowlatt Act, we all know what happened in Jallianwala Bagh in 1919. And in protest to that, in one of his speech, he says that science can wait, but Swaraj cannot. The kind of patriotism this scientific fraternity used to have, and the money that he earned out of all his work for his companies, all the money he has returned back to the society. And more than 10,000 rupees of donation he gave during the Khulna famine in 1921 and Bengal flood in 1923. Such kind of personality was there. And in the discrimination, when Acharya Praful Chandra Rai, when he come back to India and requested to be a part of this presidency college, in Alfred Croft says Acharya Praful Chandra Rai, when he was asking Acharya, when Acharya was requesting him that the kind of treatment that Britishers are giving is not right. And in response to that, Alfred Croft says that there are other walks of life open to you. Nobody compel you to take this appointment. Such kind of a discrimination was there, and he is the one who actually channelized and motivated many people to work in the field of science. And Acharya Praful Chandra Ray brought the Meghnad Saha, Satyendranath Bose, Gyanendranath Mukherjee into the field of science. And Gandhiji also says about Acharya Praful Chandra Rai in 1931 that it was difficult to believe that a man in a simple Indian race and wearing a simple manner would possibly be the great scientist and professor he even then was. So, and the same Acharya Praful Chandra Rai, when he was giving the lecture in the Indian Science Congress in 1920, this slide becomes so important to realize in front of the Indians that how the Britishers are in nature. Look at the kind of different surveys that Britishers established and how the different kind of discriminations were there. The number of Indians recruited were very less in number, and in fact, in looking at the salaries that they offered was so small in compared to the imperial services, and that discrimination was strongly been opposed by PC Rai, which he felt that this is not the way that the people or the Britishers should no treat the Indians. And ultimately these people have helped in establishment of various Indian institutions for the Indians, so that Indians can really do a great amount of science. And that is where the Mahendralal Sarkar established Indian Association of Cultivation of Science in 1976, Indian Industrial Association in 1892 by Pramat Nath Bose, Kolkata Mathematical Society by Ashutosh Mukherjee, 1909 by as an Indian Institute of Sciences by Jamshedji Tata and the Maharaja of Mysore, who established this IISc, and then Raja Bajar Science College, known today, which was earlier as a University College of Science, in 1914, and then Banaras Hindu University, established by Madan Mohan Malviya in 1916, and this Basu Vigyan Mandir of 1917, established by Jagdish Chandra Basu, and or otherwise Maharashtra Association of Cultivation of Science, established by Shankar Purushottam Agarkar, known today as Agarkar Research Institute. So all those institutions were built during the India's freedom struggle, so that all Indians who would like to do the research, who would like to carry on the science at par with the Britishers, by making Britishers to realize that we are not less than any one of you, and we are perhaps quite ahead of the time. And this is the way that we all know. These are all the few names which I am flashing in front of you, and many of you must be knowing the contribution by these people, whether it is Satyendranath Bose for Bose-Einstein condensation. We know Ruchiram Sani, we know C.V. Raman, who brought the Nobel Prize, we know Meghnad Saha for the Meghnad Saha ionization equation, Yellapargada Subbarao. So that means during those period, Indian scientists, scientific fraternities, scientific institutions have actually made in Britishers to realize that we are far ahead of you by the work, by the science that we carry. And that becomes so important that all of them, and we all know what C.V. Raman was crying when he was got this Nobel Prize, when he realized that my country doesn't have a flag. So the kind of patriotism those people used to have in their heart and mind. So it becomes all of us to remember that on the 75th years of India's independence, that we all should really look forward and give the respect to this Indian scientists and Indian fraternities and institutions equally as to the Mahatma Gandhi, Chandrasekhar Azad, Sardar Bhagat Singh, or Subhash Chandra Bose. That all the scientists and scientific institutions also played a very significant role, not only in terms of progress of science, but also in making the India's independence movement to be a remarkable during those period. So this is what I wanted to speak to all of you, so that through this Indian Women Scientist Association, this work can reach to the larger section of the society. And on this 75th year, let the people know